Good evening. I'd like to start by thanking the rabbis that agreed to be with us here tonight. Rabbi Farber, Rabbi Lapin, Rabbi Ben. Thank you very much. A few words about you in a moment. This show is called, as you all know, Ohelari. And it was actually Sunday. I was at a wedding, not a Raanana wedding. And someone approached me and said, I was a friend of Ari that your shul is named after. And he said, I want to tell you something about that incident when Ari fell. He fell in Shem nearly 20 years ago. It was 2002. And he said that night, the Levaya was late in the afternoon, and that night there was a wedding of one of the community. And Rabbi Wise actually addressed that at the funeral. He said, I know that many of you are heading from here to a wedding. That was over 20 years ago. And here we are standing here today, and we still feel in that same roller coaster where we have been going through so much tragedy since the terrible Simchat Torah and the war and all that it entails, falling of heroes from our community, from the surrounding communities. And at the same time, still life goes on. And being at that wedding on Sunday, seeing all the friends of the Chanan, some of them just came out of Gaza just to come to the wedding, and then they have to go back into fighting. And another friend that had to zoom in from his bed in hospital where he's lying down with his foot up in the air and a cast that is like Hashem with a better. But this roller coaster of emotions, it is not, we feel that we're living through very special times. It's great, terrible, awesome, all at the same time. And of course, at such an evening during these days, we want to acknowledge that it's Leilun Nishmat, Aryeh Zeri, Amir Skori, Daniel Ben Harush, Cheryl Ringley, Yaron Chudis, David Schwartz, Don Weidenbaum, all these, so many heroes from our community. Sacrificed their lives for us. One of the most poignant moments during the past few days was weeks or months maybe, was when I was at the wedding of friends of Aryeh Zeri and seeing Aryeh's father dancing with the Chanan at the wedding. That was such a strong moment. And thinking about it, and thinking about the times that we are, how do we handle all of this? Understanding both the greatness of the times and the tragedy of the times at the same time. That is when we're talking ourselves from a personal point of view, but then also from a communal and national point of view. Things seem to have been going in a nice direction, good direction. We all of a sudden, we understood what was happening on Simchat Torah. We all got together and it seemed that things were going in a different direction. We learned our lesson. But now we're a few months later and perhaps we're going back to old habits. Are we? Or Were we able to hold on to that lesson that we learned on Simchat Torah? All of these questions bother us, and they're in our minds, and they make us feel, I don't know, how do they make us feel? I want to ask the rabbis that are here with us tonight, what is our message to the communities at times like this, where at the one hand, we're here, we're in Eretz Israel, we made Aliyah, we made a sacrifice, some of us the ultimate sacrifice, such greatness on the one hand, such sorrow and tragedy on the other. How do we handle this? What is the message that we have for the community? So maybe let's go according to Aleph Bet, Rabbi Ben David. Let's start.
Colleagues, Lapin or Farber, it's really a privilege to be able to sit here and talk about these important issues. And hello to some old friends, and it's good to see you as well. And if you ever need a break from this side of Raanana, you could always, we're 20 minutes away, right in the Merkaz Kilat Shiftei Yisrael. I want to talk about HaKoncepsia, the concept. This is part of the Israeli lexicon today. Hey, raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. HaKoncepsia. Yes, no? Okay, a few hands. After 1973, after the tragedy of the Yom Kippur War, the Agranat Commission, led by the Supreme Court Justice Shimon Agranat, they tried to figure out what went wrong leading up to the Yom Kippur War. And they realized that the Mossad, the leaders of the Israeli intelligence community, that they had a concept. They had a way of seeing reality which was deeply flawed, which was based on unproven assumptions, which blinded them from seeing what was literally happening under their eyes as the Egyptians and the Syrians were amassing the southern and northern border. And this concepcia was that Egypt would never attack Israel until they developed better military capabilities. And lo and behold, they did attack before they developed these capabilities. And we were, of course, shocked by this, and we lost many soldiers in the front. Despite all the signals and the warnings, we couldn't see it. We were blinded to it. And this concepcia was shattered because of the Yom Kippur War. I've been thinking about this idea throughout this period, especially in light of Parshat Kitisa. Meshech Chochmah tells us that Moshe needs to literally take the luchot and smash them to the ground to teach the Jewish people that they thought, well, Moshe Rabbeinu, without him, we can't connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If the luchot are here, it means that our relationship with Hashem is upright. And so the luchot and the connection to Moshe Rabbeinu became forms of idolatry themselves. They needed to be shattered and smashed in order to start all over again from now. To etch new luchot, to engrave new luchot. So Moshe had to smash the luchot, and a number of our conceptions have been shattered during this war, just like in 1973. Let me go through what a few of these are. First of all, militarily. We thought that a $2 billion fence would protect us, would protect Otefa Aza. Didn't do anything, in fact. We thought that Hamas and the Arab terrorists were actually too dim-witted for them to really pull off the attack. They pulled off. In fact, very smart, very intelligent, and they studied us well. We thought that our military intelligence is truly omniscient. We thought that our technological know-how would give us superiority in this war. When in fact, if you go back to old principles, the chariots, the horsemen didn't do anything for us. The advanced technology didn't help us, in fact. That's on a military level. On a political level, we thought that we had the luxury this last year to fight over some judicial reform. I'm sure this will raise some people have different views about this, and this is not the time to discuss politics, but coming from someone who believes the judiciary here needs a lot of reform, I think this is one of the most foolish and dangerous policies that anyone has taken upon themselves in the last 75 years of Medinat Israel. We thought that we're just playing a game here. We woke up to realize we're living in the most hostile region in the world. But the key point is religiously. A number of concepcios were shattered religiously. Number one, we've come to realize 70 years, 75 years since the victory of World War II until today has been an aberration in human history. Democracy is an aberration. It's not the norm. The norm is tyranny and authoritative governments and suppression of freedom and persecution and people fighting wars. That's the norm. The aberration was democracy, 70 years in which Jews have been able to live, for the most part, freely, able to worship in countries throughout the world and live peacefully. And 70 years later, after the Holocaust, it feels like we've returned to something that many of us have not experienced. And we have come to realize for the first time what it's like to be a Jew living in the Middle Ages. What is it like to be the persecuted people? What is it like when the whole world, every single newspaper in England and in South Africa and America is attacking us on the BBC and CNN, and we are the object of everyone's hatred and vitriol. We know what it's like to be a Jew in 12th century, in Germany in the 13th century, in England. We know what it's like now to have lived under when the whole world was essentially, bordering on anti-Semitic. And I'm going to get to the positive piece here just a little bit, okay? But we've also, another thing that's shattered is our faith in humanity. We came to believe that everyone is created b'tzelem Elohim. We have to realize the world being created b'tzelem Elohim is a hope, it's an aspiration, it's not a fact. There's a lot of evil in the world. And though we like to believe that people are good, that we want peace, they want peace, we could talk things out, it's not the case. It's simply not the case. And so for the first time in our lives, we have felt existentially threatened. We have felt vulnerable like we've never felt before. And I want to really couch this in Purim terms. Because I think while this is very challenging to accept, there's also some light here. Because the light comes from the fact that when you break things down and things are shattered, only then can you start to begin to regrow, to build, and to construct something new. So in Purim terms, we know that there's one day of Purim. The main day of Purim is Yudalet, and Purim Ukafim, it's Tetvav. Rabbi Soloveitchik argues that Tanit Esther, the day before Purim, which incidentally is going to be on Thursday this year, instead of Purim itself is on Sunday, it's going to be on a Thursday, that Tanit Esther is an integral part of Purim. Purim is really 2 days long. There's Tanit Esther, and there is Purim Day itself, the celebration of Purim. This is why we have 2 regular readings. Right? I'm Rabbi Shimon Levi. You have to read it at night and also during the day, which corresponds to 2 different days of Purim. 2 readings, 2 different days, but these days have very different religious. The day of Purim itself, I don't need to tell you what it's about: celebration, joy, victory, nitzachon, simcha. We've all experienced that before. What is Ta'anit Esther? What's the other side of the coin? Ta'anit Esther is the day of vulnerability, of tefillah. It's the day that's captured by the war with Amalek, when Moshe has his hands up, and they're praying that we should be able to defeat Amalek. It's not a day of strength, power, victory, or of joy. It's a day of vulnerability, of feeling of, wow, we are totally reliant on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Rabbi Eitan explains what Ta'anit Esther is. It's the day the Jewish people were fasting while they were fighting at the same time. That's what Ta'anit Esther is, a story. And I don't think we've ever felt that life is generally, I'm sure people on a personal level have, but generally that life is so fragile that anything can happen. You could be, life could be amazing one day, and then the next day you could lose a member of your community or a member of your family or your cousin or your neighbor or whatever it is. We've never felt this fragile. And this is a new reality. And it appears like this is going to be reality moving forward, meaning this is the new norm. We're not going back to October 7th. We're never going to go back there. This is the new reality. And that means that we have many challenges ahead. But it also means that we have opportunities, because it means that we have reached a deeper existential place. By realizing that life is more fragile, we also realize that life is more precious. My Rabbi, Rav Chaim Sabato from Malei Adumim, always used to quote the Gemara, the pasuk from Megillat Eicha, "Ma yitonen adam chai gever al chata'av." What does this mean? Why is man complaining? Overcome your sins. So what is the word chai? What is that referring to? What is it describing in this particular instance? Ma yitonen adam chai. So the Midrash says, "Ma yitonen adam al chai ha'olamim." Why is man complaining about God, who's eternal God? But the Midrash says otherwise. Ma yitonen adam chai. Ma yitonen adam dayo shehu chai. What is man complaining about? Isn't it enough that he's living, that he's breathing, that he's woken up this morning, good health? I had a chabur today with a bunch of the older members of our community. We call them the chevra. One of them is here. Where's that? So Michael Solomon, right here. And I went around, and I just asked everyone, we have a little schmooze, and then we learned together. And I asked them, what's something that brings you joy on a daily basis? And a lot of the guys said, just waking up in the morning. Mike also spoke about you, Lorraine, about his wife. Okay, I should just say that. Sorry, Michael, I'm sorry, but okay, just sitting right here. But said just waking up in the morning, that brings me joy. The fact that we are living the appreciation for the small things. I was speaking to a chayal yesterday, wonderful person. His name is Doron Adler. Some of you may know him. He's a Rasap in and he told me, I asked him, what changed this for? He said, well, Shabbat. I haven't had a real Shabbat in 4 months. To be able to experience, breathe Shabbat, that is something, he says, I appreciate like never before. To make Kiddush, to make Havdalah. So it's about a deeper appreciation, about a deeper being in a deeper existential place, where tefillot, where they actually mean something, where we actually think about what we're doing, where we're striving for something a little bit deeper than the more shallow sort of Yiddishkeit that maybe we become accustomed to. And certainly speak for myself in this regard. There are other areas, though, where things have been shared. We've realized that the discussion around, I'm sure we'll address this more comprehensively, but the discussion around Charedim serving in the army, we always thought, again, there was a certain luxury in this discussion. It was about, we think that everyone needs to share the burden, right? Everyone needs to share the burden. And to some degree, that was a luxury that we were able to have a conversation. That conversation is no longer relevant. The conversation now is the reality that we don't have enough chayalim. I'm sure many of you know, our miluimnikim are exhausted. They're tired. They haven't seen their families in 4 months. And they're carrying too much of a burden. It's no longer about, yeah, it'd be really nice if Charedim would show up and instead of sitting in yeshiva. It's not about that anymore. We can't go on without more chayalim. We need more chayalim. 6,000 soldiers, maybe more, have been injured already in the last few months. Lo aleinu, it could be more. Please God, it shouldn't. All of them should heal and be able to fight if they're needed. But we need more lochamim. There's no question about it. And there needs to be a major shift in the way the government operates in this. It's no longer, we can't beat around the bush anymore. The budget of our government needs to be focused on helping miluimnikim families, helping chayalim at this point in time. That needs to be the focus. None of these political, games and tricks and giving every group what they want to keep them in the government. It can't be that anymore. We don't have the luxury. I wish we did. Halavina we did, but we don't have that. Another point about Jewish unity. There's a very powerful piece that Rabbi Chanan Alder wrote in Makor Rishon a few weeks ago. Maybe did anyone read the article? I don't know if anyone here reads Makor Rishon, where he spoke about the difference between achdut and biyachad. Everyone says achdut, achdut, achdut. And he argues it's essentially meaningless. What does it mean, achdut? We have different political views. We don't agree on some fundamental things. There are some real fundamental disagreements that I don't think can be resolved. But that's not the question. It's not about having achdut, it's about having biyachad. Biyachad means that we sit around the table, all the different groups, the different miflagot, whatever it is, religious site, everybody, and we say, wait a second, we've got to find a way forward. And it means that we've all got to compromise on the things that we hold dear. We've all got to give of ourselves. We've all got to find some way forward together. It means that we got to recognize we cannot have it all. The Tilumi community can't have everything they want. The Haredim can't have everything they want. The Chilonim, no one's going to get everything. We're going to have to find some middle ground based on compromise, flexibility. Because unity at this point is more important, or biyachad is more important than any of the other things that we're trying to. There's got to be a real shift. We've got to focus on the 70% of the things that 70% of the Jewish population here agrees with. That's it. We can't allow minority needs to monopolize our budget, our time, our resources. We don't have that luxury anymore. Now there is light here. There's a lot of light. And I do believe that having reached rock bottom, that we have the capacity, the opportunity to rebuild, but we have to play our cards really well. We don't have the luxury of messing this one up. So I'll give you a few examples of some light. I was in Bislamach just a few days ago. We did a barbecue. Our community, South African community, we use the word bri. We ran a bri for 140 chayalim. Were called back to Gaza 3 days before. They were in Gaza for 3 months. They got called back. They thought they were going to be home. Then they were called back right away. And they came, they showed up. And the menpei of the Plugat, he said, wow, all of you got a call, and you could have decided not to show up. All showed up. That is incredible. The gvura of our lochamim is incredible. This is a nace. This is a miracle. The gvura that they have demonstrated is a miracle of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No doubt about it. Just like the gvura we demonstrated during Chanukah was a miracle. The Mesirut Nefesh of our chayalim, of Am Yisrael Bichlal, the chesed and volunteerism, is incredible. And we're seeing how good, Mi K'Amcha Yisrael, how wonderful, how incredible, how good we are as a people. I've been reading recently a book by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. I just got a Kindle. I find that I've been reading too much news, so I'm trying to get away from news and read more books. So I bought myself a Kindle. And one of the books I'm reading now is by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Morality, his last book. And he points out that many of the tectonic shifts that are destroying civilization and society today are because we moved from a mentality of we to I. This has affected the economy, the family, everything, politics, from we to I. Here in Medinat Yisrael, we are a we society. It's incredible. We sort of were the bridge between the East and the West, right? But we are a we society. About putting others before ourselves. And that's an incredible thing. I'll give you one more example. And this example, and with this I'll conclude, it may not be so popular, and I struggle with it a little bit myself, but we have a doctor in our community, a wonderful, wonderful doctor, very, very modest, but he's not here, so I can talk about him. His name is Dr. Dean Lutrin. He's one of the top surgeons here in Israel and formerly in South Africa. And he did a really complex surgery on some Palestinian guy from Shechem. And when the guy saw him walk into the room with his kippah, he was actually frightened. It was this me guy, he's going to do surgery, he's going to cut me open. And Dean, did what he did with the expertise that he has. And afterwards, this guy from Shechem, this Palestinian from Shechem, he said, "Wow, ata achi shali, you are my brother." Now, again, I know that this is not a simple story because of everything that we've seen, and we also did surgery on Yahya Sinwar's brain, and this is, but this is how good Am Yisrael is. This is who we are. This is who we are. And I'll conclude with one final point about where I believe we need to be as a Dati-Leumi community. I look around Kilat Ohel Ari, I look at my own Kila, all the other Kilat represented here. It's incredible what Raanana does, incredible the nefesh of our communities. If all of Am Yisrael were like our communities, I don't think we'd have some of the challenges that we're facing today. But I really do believe that we need to proudly and aggressively push our hashkafa. You can be a chayal and fight for Medinat Yisrael and embrace Torah at the same time. These two things are not in contradiction. They go together. This is the path of David HaMelech. This is the path of all the Giborim that came before us. And this is what we need to push to. And we can't do this with, Hezder is an ideal. Fighting in Sahal and learning Torah it's not just the ideal, it's the only option. And we need to be proud of this and push this. And we can no longer cower behind other hashkafot and say, we have to push this with pride and with ga'ava. Because this is the only way forward for Am Yisrael at this point in time. This is the only way that we have to return to be the bridge of Am Yisrael. The Datilumi community has sort of chosen sides within Israel's political chessboard. And I think actually it's very sad. We need to move back to being that bridge that connects all the different parts. It's able to take the good from each of the different parts and bring it together and unify. That's who we have to become again, even if it means that we feel like we're like the friars of the United States. So that's what we need to do with pride and with God. Please, God, this gathering should help to be one step forward, to bring more of that feeling of biyachad for all of Medinat Yisrael this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Ben David, about realization, about biyachad, perhaps self-realization, the we part. Thank you very, very much. Both Rabbi Ben David and Rabbi Farber were here before Chanan and I came to Raanana, and Baruch Hashem, built and established yourselves in the community, your community, and have also helped us since when we first came to town. So I thank you very much. And in this regard, I want to thank you very much, Rabbi Farber, for always being there for us, being for the shul here even before we came, and continuing to be here for the shul even after we came, because as we know, there are many things that the shul still needs you in, and you're always here for me, so thank you very much. And I realized another thing. Rabbi David was talking about realization. I realized that I did write to the rabbis that we each will talk for 10 minutes, but I didn't emphasize it, and I didn't stress that I actually meant it. But we don't have enough. So hopefully, right. Yeah. Father.
This is the Anglo.
Communally and nationally, maybe even internationally, that we're looking for some sort of recipe to take us out of the chaos that was created, that continues to evolve and snowball even over the last few months. The Torah has a very fascinating approach to chaos. It's in the first words of the Torah. That is Va'aretz hayta tohu vavohu, and the first response is V'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. Ruach Elohim, God's spirit or God's countenance, at a time where there are no people, obviously, is something that's an antidote to chaos. How exactly that plays itself out, actually, we don't really know so much in Bereshit. God comes to organize the world out of a sense of disorganization. But the phrase Ruach Elohim appears again when it comes to the building of the Mishkan. Right, the person who's invested B'Tzalel, the person who's invested Tzelem Elohim, is invested with Ruach Elohim. It's actually not the only time it appears. It appears one more time in the Torah. But the creation of the Mishkan the organization, not just of categories, but the sense of capacity to build out of chaos is an incredibly powerful image, in my humble opinion, for where we stand today. Betzalel, the building of the Mishkan, comes on the heels of another chaotic moment, no less chaotic, perhaps even literally equally chaotic to the creation, to the Tohu Vavohu of the creation of the world. That is the Egel HaZahav. And if you look for just a moment at those passages, you'll see that the same Zahav that was built, was used for the Egel HaZahav, is used for the building of the Mishkan. The phrase Vayakel that appears in the creation of, and the chaotic moment of the Egel appears again when it comes to building the Mishkan, and the verb aseh, to build. When they build the Egel HaZahav, when they build chaos out of their own creation, is the same verb that appears when it comes to building the Mishkan. And I think the instruction is maybe it's commonplace, maybe it's obvious. It needs to be said, and I think it needs to be internalized, which is that God has invested us with the capacity to, one, be humbled by chaos. We look at the Ruach Elohim, or maybe we search for the Ruach Elohim, and we can't necessarily find it. When we're thrown into moments of deep pain, anguish, and chaos, we know the Ruach Elohim is there, even if we can't touch it. That's one point. We can't understand the chaos. We can't make sense of the chaos. And at the same time, we have a great responsibility to build out of the chaos. We have an incredible imperative, nothing less than an imperative, to take the same Zahav that brought us down, maybe even to take the same Ayakel that others brought us down, and find a way to build ourselves up. Chaos can be paralyzing. And I'm sure all of you share with me, there have been many, many moments in the last 4 months where you've been paralyzed. Some of you see me walking around Raanana sometimes, and there isn't a day that I walk around Raanana where I don't just stop at some point, not consciously. I just stop because I can't go forward. And the same paralysis is also something that has to not just keep us moving forward, but enable us to build again. How do we build again? We don't pretend we're still searching for the Ruach Elohim. We don't blind ourselves that we don't understand what's happened to us. We don't pretend that we've been devastated. That we haven't been devastated, because we've been devastated, we've been devastated. But even so, look for those building blocks. The alphabet, what could put us back together. And even through the darkness of the moments we're in now. And I assure you that we're still in the darkness. I like to pretend that it's over, but it's not. And, when you get those phone calls, 5 minutes after candlelighting, that someone's been hurt. And I get those phone calls, and I got that phone call this Friday night. This isn't over, and it's still, you come to shul, you learn, and you do chesed, and you look for those points of light that will allow us to build again. It isn't simple. We don't have someone coming down and saying, I've invested you with Ruach Elohim. We don't have a Betzalel who can come along and say, come everybody, play your role. Or at least not yet. But we have to wait for that to happen. In the meantime, prepare ourselves for the opportunities that present themselves. The one response I think is particularly dramatic to the building of the Mishkan. The building of Mishkan is something that people volunteer for, but somehow or another in the halacha, everybody takes a role in it. Everybody has a piece of it. So prepare yourselves. Keep thinking, keep looking, keep practicing, keep looking on the horizon. And most importantly, know that at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future, we're going to have an opportunity, we're going to be called upon to play a role in the rebuilding of the Mishkan. When we do, we all have to step up to our role.
Thank you very much, Farber. Chaos, the Ruach Elohim, the divine spirit. I must tell you that I don't know if it's going to be correct, but members of your soul, where we've seen chaos and where we've seen the rebuilding of the Mishkan. One of those moments I mentioned at the very beginning when Mark Ziering was dancing with the girlfriend, dear friend, the dear friend of his son of Aryeh. That was a moment of Ruach Elohim. That was a moment of you saw Hashem speaking Yidena Shkovim with that dance. You saw it was a powerful moment. And when speaking to Alan and Stacy Kamer, whose son Nadav, who we all dug in for his refuah shlema, Nadav Efraim ben Ramit Leah, and the way they talk, the emunah that they have, and the positivity, and looking forward. I think sometimes within that chaos, Hashem is giving us an opportunity as human beings to build that Mishkan. And thank you very much for those words. And Bezat Hashem, not only those heroes that I just spoke about will be building the Mishkan, but we would all be able to take part in that building and Bezat Hashem, Chas v'Chalila, not out of suffering, but out of strength. Thank you, Rabbi Lapin. My acquaintance with Rabbi Lapin goes back way before Raanana. I think it was nearly 20 years ago when we were in Port Elizabeth, and Rabbi Lapin there. We don't have time for detail, but was helping me in my very first steps in the Rabbi. And I said no why.
Stand up. Oh, yes. I stand up, I can see my daughter and grandson. Baptist, thank you for bringing us together for comfort and inspiration. Ben David, thank you for your words, Farber, for your words. The comfort and inspiration is something we can't get on our own. We can't be sitting in our own houses getting the comfort and inspiration. We need the biyachad. We can't get the Ruach Elohim just sitting in our own homes. We need the biyachad to be able to do that. And thanks for making that possible. And I appreciate also Rav Kodaza, my friend Rav Kodaza's presence here, to acknowledge and wonderful to see you. And all of you, just an honor to be here with you. I know how much this community has done and is doing as a community and as individuals in this community, how much chesed, how much sacrifice, how much effort, even in good times. It's a community that is known for its chesed and tzedakah, and Torah. Certainly in these difficult times, the community has really done so many amazing things, most of which most people don't even know about. The Nace of Purim didn't start at Esther's party when Achashverosh turned on Haman. The Nace of Purim started when Haman picked on the Jewish people long before that. The anti-Semitism of Megillas Esther, the hatred, that was the Nace, because without that, the story wouldn't have happened. We like to think of the Nace as just the happy ending. They lived happily ever after. What a miracle. But Nisim don't start with the happy endings. Nisim generally start with tragic beginnings. October the 7th was Nes. It was Lamala min HaTeva. We can talk about conceptia, but to me, in my limited understanding and knowledge, that the state of Israel was caught asleep was Lamala min HaTeva. There was no way that there is any explanation, and it'll be interesting to see when the studies are made and the analyses are done. I don't believe we're going to get any answers. I don't believe we're going to read those reports and say, that's what happened. We will be as curious and as amazed and as stunned as we ever were, because Hashem closed our eyes. For whatever reason, it had to happen. Perhaps it didn't have to happen. If we hadn't got ourselves into such a terrible mess over the last year before that, maybe we could have come together in an easier way. But Simchas Torah of this year was the day that Hashem decided to bring us together. We made it such that there was only one way to do so. And in order for that to happen, we had to be caught asleep. And the fact that this was Lamala min HaTeva, it was beyond nature, and therefore it's in the category of Nes, means that we are watching history unfold. We're living in biblical times. We're living in times where the most amazing things are happening. It's painful. It's tragic. It's chaotic. All of the things we're talking about, all the things we're feeling, that's what it feels like to be at the birth pains of Nisim. They're tragic and they're hard. And they're sad. They bring loss. But we are in the midst of the unfolding of something beyond dramatic and important. And it's so important that we remain conscious of that at all times, and we realize we don't have any control over what happened on October the 7th. We didn't we learn that? We should have already been prepared for that with COVID. Did the world not learn from COVID that we're not in control, that we can't predict, that with all the science and with all the big data, nobody knows anything about anything? It's all beyond us. We have to try to make sense of things, but we don't really understand, and we can't predict. And we get caught by surprise over and over and over again. October the 7th was another time that we were caught by surprise. So we can't control that. We couldn't control October the 7th. We can't control what's happening now. We can't control what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know how the story is going to unfold. We have three choices. We can't control. What can we do? We can obstruct. We can try and stop it from happening. We can perpetuate the machloket that caused it in the first place. We can add to the weakness of our nation so as to add to the strength of our enemies. We can do whatever we want to try and obstruct this process. Or we can stand back and passively observe it happening. Or we can participate. Those are our choices. Do we want to obstruct? Do we want to observe? Or do we want to be a player in history? Do we want to be a partner in history as Hashem unfolds this time before us? And I just want to touch on three opportunities that this unfolding of history is offering us, and to urge us not to obstruct these opportunities, not to observe these opportunities, but to participate in these opportunities. The first is Am levadad yishkon. History is unfolding in a way that we're learning once again, as Rabbi Ben David said, the last 75 years was the aberration. We're learning once again. Am levadad yishkon. We are in it alone. We've just got to get our heads around that. Nobody is going to stand there to help us unless it's in their interests. They'll help us for as long as it's in their interests. Nobody is there for us. Nobody cares about us. We've got to get that into our minds. Am levadat yishkon. And am levadat yishkon means so much more than that. And the Tzvi explains that am levadat yishkon uvagoyim lo yitchashav. If we live levadat, if we understand that we're in it alone, and that we don't have to adapt our values to suit the Americans, or to suit the French, or the Germans, or the British, we can do what we need to do. We can do what's right for us, because it won't make any difference at the end of the day. No matter what we do, the sin'ah will be there when there's sin'ah, and there'll be support when it suits them to support, no matter what we do. When we understand that we take our cue, our direction from the Torah, and not from other nations, then yishkon. Then we will find that we're able to dwell in peace. People will accept us. People will recognize us as different, as odd, as our own people. But they'll leave us alone. If we try and live like the other goyim, not like an am says the Netziv is a community of people. A goy is a political entity, a nation. If we live as a community with the values of a community, the caring and the biyachad of a community, it'll be yishkon. If we try to live like a goy, like one of the nations of the world, they won't take us. They won't be interested. How we see this playing out. So we can observe this, we can try and abstract it, or we can participate. The second opportunity is silos are breaking. Haredi and modern Orthodox and Chiloni and Dati and left wing and right wing, and silos are coming down whether we like it or not. We can abstract that and try and keep the silos in place and try and label everybody and put them in their little boxes. But I've learned over the last few years of being here, and even more so over the last few months, you don't know who's Haredi. There are lots of people that dress like Haredim, and they're not. They're not even Orthodox. There are people who don't dress like anything at all, hardly dress at all. And they're very Haredi in mindset, and sometimes in behavior. You don't know who's left-wing and who's right-wing. They were left-wing, and now they're right-wing. They were right-wing, and now they're centrist. They change. You don't know who's who anymore, because the silos are coming. We can obstruct that and try and keep people in their silos. We can just stand back and observe it. We can participate in it, start getting to know people without the silence and without the packaging and without the labeling. And then the third point, I think, is a new Zionism. We were concerned, if you remember, until October the 6th, that Zionism was dying, that idealism that we used to have, we have no more. Well, what happened on October the 7th? Zionism was reborn. Once again, there's a recognition, not only in Eretz Israel, but throughout the world. Not only that we are proud to be Jews and need to be proud to be Jewish and to understand what that means, who we are as Jews, but also the centrality of Eretz Israel in our lives. There's no argument, there's no debate about that anymore. It's as Rabbi was saying, the kind of conversations we used to be able to have were luxuries. You can have a luxury Zionism alive, isn't it? How important is Eretz Israel? What is the relationship of Eretz Israel to the Galut? All these conversations, you remember, they were going on until October the 6th. They stopped because they're irrelevant. So there's pride in our Jewishness, there's a centrality of Eretz Israel, and there's an openness to learn and to serve. Secular people are open to learning in ways they were not before. Not everybody, but many. And Haredim are open to serve. Not everybody, but many. Does that mean they're open to serving in the army in exactly the same way as everybody is? No, not necessarily. But open to serving and realizing a need to serve. The days of those arguments are over. It doesn't mean that nobody is in those positions. I'm just saying a new trend has started. There is a movement. There's a movement to pride in Jewish identity throughout the world. There's a movement in understanding the centrality of Eretz Israel. And there's a movement in being willing to learn and open to serve. Let's take advantage of these movements. Let's participate in these movements. Let's encourage them. Because we have the privilege of living in the most phenomenal period of time, as painful as it is. We have the privilege of living now. We have the privilege of not only watching history unfold, but being partners with the Ribono Shel Olam, and Ma'aseh Bereishis, so to say, partners with Hashem in recreating history for an era that we don't yet know and don't yet understand, but will have been among those who were at its foundation, at its creation.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Talking about living history, taking part in history. If I can summarize everything that we heard here tonight, it was about realization, self-realization, about building a Mishkan and taking part in history, being part of history and building a Mishkan at its time. All of our dreams and aspirations come true, and may Hashem take us through these difficult times, through these chaotic moments, and B'ezrat Hashem help us build that Mishkan at its time. So thank you very, very much. I appreciate very much that I know how busy you are, and you took time out of your busy schedule to be here with us tonight. So Rabbi Lapin and Farber both apologize that we leave after this.
I'm staying.
Wonderful. Thank you. And but which makes it even more special because it was difficult for them to make it, but they did that because it's important for them. So, and our next session in 2 minutes would be with Outland Structure. Thank you very, very much for being with us. And this is my first opportunity tonight. I will do it over the night a few times. I want to thank Fisher and Karen Miller Johnson for putting this evening together. And Fabio Bernstein for his loyal help. Thank you very, very much. So we can, it is now 7:28. So 7:40. 7:40 for reconvene. In the meantime, in the back, there is some refreshments, tea and coffee. Please help yourselves with it. Yeah.